Before language, before speech, before the first syllable was breathed into being, there was love. But not the love we speak of today, not the love penned in poetry or whispered in quiet rooms. This was a primordial pulse, a vibration that moved through the marrow of the earth, the rhythm of the stars, the silent dance of light and shadow. Love, in that ancient moment, was not a word, it was a force, an underlying current that shaped existence itself before the mind could label or contain it. It was a presence, felt deeply in the body and soul, yet utterly inexpressible, too vast for the confines of language, too sacred for the casual tongue. The earliest humans did not speak of love because love was the ground beneath their feet, the unspoken, unseen matrix in which all things moved and grew. It was not an object of discourse, it was the context of being. To speak it aloud risked unraveling its mystery. Words, after all, create boundaries, and love, in its purest form, transcended all boundaries. It was the silent thread weaving together the earth and sky, the living and the divine, the self and the other. Yet, even in its silence, love was known. It was carried in ritual breath, in the geometry of sacred sites, in the harmony of music played beneath the open sky. Love was felt in the sacred union of opposites, in the tension and release of creation's eternal dance. It was the force that both held worlds together and pulled them apart. And so the ancients did not speak of love. They lived it in silence, in symbol, in sacred practice. Because to speak of love too simply was to risk losing its infinite depth. They preserved it as a sacred secret, a flame guarded by mystery, waiting for those who would come to understand love not as a word, but as the very essence of existence itself. Love, a word that today is spoken with ease, worn like a garment, whispered in fleeting moments, sung in endless songs. But for the ancients, love was not so simple. It was sacred ease, but also dangerous, a force too potent for common tongue, too wild for casual hearts. Imagine love not as a gentle feeling, but as a primordial energy, a powerful current that could build or destroy worlds. To touch it without reverence was to invite chaos. To misunderstand it was to court ruin. In ancient civilizations, love was entwined with the cosmic balance, a force that both binds and rends. It was the sacred fire held in the temple, the flame that could warm or burn, depending on the keeper's wisdom. The stories and myths, they whisper hints of this power, but rarely name it outright. Instead, love's presence is veiled in allegories of gods and mortals, of passion and sacrifice, of destruction and rebirth. This silence was deliberate, not ignorance, but guardianship. Love was a mystery to be approached with caution and awe. To speak of it casually was to risk awakening a force that could shatter illusions, tear apart kingdoms, and unravel the very fabric of order. In many cultures, love was considered a threshold, a crossing point between worlds. It was the bridge between life and death, between the mortal and the divine. To cross that bridge unprepared was perilous. Rituals, initiations, and secret teachings were designed to contain this power, to channel it safely, to honor it as the force that shapes destinies. The ancients recognized that love is not only a blessing, but also a test. It demands courage, the courage to face one's shadow, to surrender control, to be vulnerable before the vast unknown. In this light, love is a sacred danger, a wild river that must be respected, not dammed or domesticated. Their silence on love was a form of reverence, a recognition that some truths are too vast for the casual mind. They encoded love in symbols and ceremonies, not to hide it, but to protect it, to teach those ready how to approach it with the right balance of humility and strength. So the question remains, why did ancient civilizations never speak of love openly? Because to speak of it was to summon a power that demanded responsibility. Because love was the force that held the universe together, but could just as easily tear it apart. And because love is both sacred and dangerous, a paradox the ancients lived with and honored in their deepest mysteries. Step into the shadows of ancient temples, those grand, silent places built from stone and mystery. Walk their empty halls, trace the carvings worn by centuries, and listen not with your ears, but with the pulse of your soul. You will find one thing striking. In all their grandeur, ancient temples almost never speak openly about love. No sweeping declarations carved in stone, no exalted hymns dedicated to passion or affection. Instead, a profound silence. Why? Because love, in its deepest form, was considered too vast, too sacred, to be captured by words or statues. It was the unspoken core around which everything else revolved, the hidden flame within the altar's shadow. Temples were not shrines to love as emotion, but to the cosmic forces that birth and sustain existence. Their rituals sought to harmonize with these forces, to align human hearts with the rhythms of the cosmos, to awaken a transcendent love that transcended personal feeling. Within these stone walls, love was transformation, not sentiment. It was the sacred union of opposites, the marriage of sun and moon, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, a cosmic dance, eternal and unending. The priests and priestesses who guarded these temples were not tasked with teaching romance. They were the keepers of initiation guides through rites that dissolved the ego, shattered illusions of separation, and opened the initiate to the boundless field of unity love. This silence about love was also a protection. Love's power was known to tear apart those unprepared. In the wrong hands, love could lead to madness, despair, or destruction. And so it was veiled in myth, symbol, and sacred geometry, a language only the initiated could understand. Every column, every carving, every aligned star was part of a hidden curriculum teaching the language of love without naming it, whispering its secrets through symbols and stories, waiting for those who could see beyond the surface. In this way, love was preserved not as a casual feeling, but as a mystery to be approached with reverence, to be earned through inner work, and to be lived as a profound transformation that changes not just the individual, but the very fabric of reality. The temples teach us that love is not a word to be spoken lightly. It is the silence that holds the universe together, the sacred space where all opposites dissolve, and the eternal flame that burns beyond time. To speak openly of love would have been to break this silence, to invite forces too powerful to be contained. Thus, ancient civilizations kept love in shadow, waiting for the hearts brave enough to seek it beyond the walls. To truly grasp why ancient civilizations refrained from speaking openly about love, we must shift our perspective away from the familiar modern notion of love as mere emotion, a fleeting feeling of affection, desire, or attachment. In the ancient worldview, love was something far deeper, far more profound. Love was transformation. It was the process through which consciousness expanded, through which the soul awakened and evolved. It was not something you had or felt in a moment, but something that happened to you, or rather, through you. Love was the alchemical fire that burned away illusion, that dissolved separation, that transmuted the mundane into the sacred. It was the invisible hand, that pulled the strands of existence together, weaving unity from multiplicity. In this light, love transcended the domain of emotions altogether. It belonged not to the heart alone, but to the entire being, mind, body, spirit, caught in the eternal dance of creation. Ancient sages taught that love is the bridge between self and other, between human and divine, between the finite and infinite. It was the cosmic intercourse that created stars and worlds, the sacred resonance that allowed opposites to meet and new life to emerge. Because love was understood as a transformative force, it could not be confined to mere feelings. To speak of love as a simple emotion was to diminish its power to domesticate the wild, sacred fire into something tame. Therefore, the ancients often refrained from naming it directly. Instead, they cloaked love in symbols and myths of gods united and torn apart, in rites of initiation that simulated death and rebirth, in sacred geometry that embodied the sacred marriage of opposites. They understood that to awaken love was to undergo a profound inner transmutation, a journey that required courage, humility, and surrender. This is why love was not taught as a lesson or explained as doctrine. It was experienced, passed down through initiation, through the living transmission of ritual and presence. It was the flame kindled deep within the temple of the soul, waiting to consume the ego, to dissolve separateness, and to ignite the luminous unity beneath. In this understanding, love was not safe. It was the greatest transformation and the deepest mystery. It was not something you could possess, but something that possessed you. And because of this, ancient civilizations never spoke of love as we do today. For them, love was not a subject to be discussed, but a sacred path to be walked. In the silence where ancient civilizations avoided speaking openly of love, a secret language thrived, a language woven of symbol, sound, and sacred geometry, known only to those initiated into its mysteries. Love spoke in symbols, not words. It whispered in the curves of spirals etched in stone, in the intricate patterns of mandalas, in the delicate interplay of light and shadow within sacred temples. These symbols were more than decoration. They were vessels of meaning, carriers of an invisible language that communicated the nature of love itself, a language that transcended ordinary speech, reaching directly into the depths of being. In this hidden tongue, the serpent was not just an amulet, was the symbol of transformation. The kundalini fire coiled at the base of the spine, waiting to awaken and rise. The lotus was not simply a flower, it was the unfolding of consciousness, the blooming of the soul in love's light. The circle was not just a shape, it was wholeness, eternity, the endless embrace of unity. Love's language was also found in ritual ceremonies that moved beyond words, invoking presence through breath, movement, and sound. The chants and melodies were not mere music, but vibrational keys unlocking states of being, opening hearts to the ineffable. The architecture of temples itself was part of this language, each alignment to celestial bodies, each proportion and angle, a word in the sacred lexicon. To the uninitiated, this language was mysterious, even cryptic. To the initiated, it was living and breathing, a map for journeying into the heart of love. This language required no direct naming because love's essence defied naming. It is a vibration, a resonance, a dance between presence and absence. Only those who could perceive beyond the veil could understand its syntax and grammar. And so, the hidden language of love became a guarded secret, passed down in whispers, encoded in myths and symbols, revealed only to those prepared to receive it. It was the language of the heart before words, the language of transformation beyond emotion, the language of love itself, silent, powerful, eternal. In this silence, love spoke most loudly, not with speech, but with presence. Within the deep folds of ancient civilizations, there existed a select few, those chosen to be the guardians of love's profound secret. They were not mere priests or shamans, but initiates of an inner wisdom, keepers of knowledge that could not be entrusted to the masses. Love, as they understood it, was too powerful, too sacred to be treated lightly. To reveal it openly would risk its profanation. To speak of it without readiness would invite chaos and suffering. These guardians were the silent custodians, tasked with protecting the sacred flame from the winds of misunderstanding and misuse. They operated in shadows, passing their wisdom through cryptic symbols, through rites cloaked in mystery, through allegory and parable. They maintained the balance between revealing and concealing, between initiation and secrecy. Their role was not authoritarian, but deeply humble. They held the threshold, the boundary between the known and the unknown, between the human and the divine. Through rigorous discipline, they cultivated their own capacity to hold love's power without being consumed by it. They were the living bridges, channels for the sacred energy that transformed lives without overwhelming them. Their teachings were not for everyone, but for the prepared few, those called to walk the path of inner alchemy, those ready to transmute love's fire into wisdom and healing. They understood that love's true expression could only arise from deep knowledge, knowledge that integrated shadow and light, desire and surrender, loss and transcendence. Because love was not only bliss, it was pain, sacrifice, and transformation. It required strength and vulnerability intertwined. And so, the guardians kept the secret safe, knowing that true love cannot be grasped by the unready mind or the untrained heart. Their silence was a sacred vow, not of exclusion, but of protection. A promise that when the time was right, the secret would be revealed anew, not in words, but in lived experience. They were the quiet flame that never extinguished, the hidden keepers of humanity's deepest mystery. And their legacy still echoes in the secret societies, in the mystical traditions, in the silent heartbeats of those who seek beyond words. They wait, they watch, they guard. Love and power, two forces intertwined since the dawn of consciousness, a dance as old as time itself, yet always fragile, always precarious. Ancient civilizations understood this delicate balance better than most realize today. Love was never merely soft or sentimental. It was a force of transformation, capable of creating worlds or destroying them. Power, whether wielded by kings, priests, or gods, was inseparable from love's energy, but also a potential source of corruption. The sacred pact between humanity and the divine was a constant negotiation of this tension. Love granted power its depth, but unchecked power could crush love. This is why love was so often kept hidden, not only out of reverence, but out of fear. Fear that its true potency would be twisted into manipulation, that what should unite could divide, that what should heal could wound. Rulers and priesthoods learned to harness love's image to cloak authority in symbols of sacred affection, to use ritual and myth to bind the people's hearts and wills. Yet beneath the surface, the genuine mystery of love remained guarded because true love was freedom, and freedom was the greatest threat to any power that sought control. The paradox was clear. To truly lead, one must surrender control. To truly possess love, one must let go. This is why love was often portrayed in myth as both blessing and curse, the divine gift that could bring ecstasy and ruin. It was the flame that purified and the fire that consumed. Ancients knew that love without wisdom was dangerous. Power without love was tyranny, and the interplay between the two was the crucible of civilization itself. The silence around love was in part an effort to preserve this balance, to keep love's raw force from being wielded recklessly, to protect the sacred from becoming a tool of oppression. Today, as we unravel the myths of power and love, we glimpse how far we have strayed, how easily love has been diluted into sentimentality or possession, and power into dominance or greed. Yet the ancient wisdom remains. Love and power are two halves of a whole. Their harmony is essential to human evolution. To speak openly of love without recognizing its power is to risk misunderstanding. To reclaim love's sacred nature, we must also reclaim its power, not the power over others, but the power to transform, to heal, to awaken. Only then can we begin to walk the path. The ancients quietly honored a path of delicate balance between surrender and strength, between freedom and connection. And in this balance, we find the true meaning of love. We live in a time saturated with talk of love. Songs, movies, books all speak its name. Yet, despite this abundance, the ancient depth of love remains largely forgotten. Modern love is often reduced to fleeting feelings, romance, or desire. It is packaged as something consumable, measured in likes, texts, and fleeting moments. This is a profound misunderstanding, a shadow cast by the loss of the original sacred context. The ancients never spoke of love as a simple emotion, nor as a mere social contract. For them, love was a cosmic force, a transformative power, a path toward wholeness. Today, love is often separated from its spiritual roots. It is taught as something to be sought outside, something to be owned or possessed. This modern framing leads to confusion, pain, and a sense of disconnection. We mistake passion for love, attachment for union, possession for connection. And in doing so, we lose sight of love's true nature, as a force that both frees and binds, that demands courage and surrender, that is at once wild and tender. Our relationships often reflect this fractured understanding, marked by longing, misunderstanding, and fear. Yet, the ancient wisdom quietly persists in forgotten rituals, in the echo of myth, in the silent pulse of the heart. To reclaim love's true meaning, we must go beyond the surface and reconnect with the living essence that once guided human connection. It requires deep inner work to heal the wounds of separation, to transcend fear, to awaken to love as a transformative presence. This is the invitation hidden beneath the noise, to remember love as the ancients knew it, not a word, but a way of being. A sacred dance between self and other, between human and divine. And in remembering, we begin to heal not only our hearts, but the world itself. Now, in the quiet moments when the world slows, when the mind stills, there is a call, a whisper beneath the noise. It is the unspoken love of ancient times, not lost, but waiting. Waiting for those who will listen, not with ears, but with hearts open wide. For love was never meant to be spoken simply. It was meant to be lived. In silence, in mystery, in sacred presence. To remember love as the ancients did is to step beyond words, beyond fear, beyond the shallow definitions that limit us today. It is to reclaim love as the transformative force that shapes our souls, that binds us to each other, that connects us to the cosmos. To remember is to awaken to the dance of opposites, to the sacred union of shadow and light, to the eternal pulse beneath all things. It is a calling back to the first temple, built not of stone, but of attention and reverence. And as more awaken, as the ancient flame is kindled anew, love moves quietly through the world, not as sentiment, but as power, not as possession, but as freedom. This is the path forward. To honor the unspoken, to hold the sacred silence, and to live love as the profound mystery it has always been. The ancient civilizations never spoke openly of love, because love was the ground of all things, too vast to be contained in words. Now it calls to us again, to remember, to awaken, to become.